Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. You know, whatever I do tonight, I'm going to end up upsetting some people because this has stoked passions, right? The scorecards tonight. And the sad thing is that the Danny Jacobs against John Ryder fight and the Felix Casham and Media fight had so many adjustments and great little technical things that I really want to talk about. And that should be the focus here. I really want to get quite deep and technical on these sorts of fights. But unfortunately, I know that a lot of people are going to be more concerned with the scorecards. Now, what I will say is this. I personally had Danny Jacobs winning the fight 7-5. However, the DAZN team were saying that the fight started to turn from the 7th round onwards. I disagree with that. The first 4 rounds for me were clear Danny Jacobs rounds. Now, Gabriel Rosado, who's an American who felt that this was a robbery, he came out and he said post-fight, now he knows what's happened to me has happened to him because he feels that the Murray fight was a robbery. He actually gave the first round an even round, a 10-10. I don't agree with him. I give that to Jacobs. The 5th round, though, the fight started to change with Ryder starting to be more active and his tempo started to rise. That round I also gave to Jacobs. So I have Jacobs 5-0 up, even though that was potentially a swing round. The 6th, though, which was also a swing round, went to Ryder, in my opinion. So it wasn't from the 7th that it changed. It was from the 6th, really, with the 5th being a bit of a swing. The 12th, I gave to Jacobs. First half of the fight, Jacobs wins the fight. The second half of the fight, Ryder wins the fight. Now, there was 1 or 2 swing rounds in the latter half of the fight, too. I think it was the 9th and the 11th off the top of my head, or the 10th and the 11th. There were a couple of swing rounds there. But I can understand if you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, Jacobs won his rounds. Clearly, this was obviously a very wide fight. I don't think it was a wide fight on the scorecards necessarily. Let's talk about what actually happened in terms of the adjustments. Initially, John Ryder clearly came out tempo far too low, right? But one of the problems that he had, apart from the agility of Danny Jacobs, and I didn't have an opportunity to bring a pre-fight video for this particular fight, but what I did do is tweet about what I thought would occur. And I'm going to read you how I felt this fight would go. I said, Jacobs is very agile and a good mover. Ryder tends to be good when someone comes to him, for instance, Cox, or doesn't back up when he steps forward, for example, Smith. He can plod a bit, though. And therefore, as long as Jacobs keeps him rotating and he's got that movement, I think Ryder will struggle to get inside consistently. He is good at cutting off the ring, though, and we have to ask how robust and durable Jacobs is these days. I guess we don't know, but if he's close to his best, it'll be a tough night stylistically for Ryder, in my humble opinion. Having said that, Rosier is talking about him needing to be marauding, exciting, and go after Ryder. If he does that, he could play into Ryder's hands. Interesting fight, but personally, I think Jacobs will win the fight. Now, based on that, I think the fight pretty much turned out the way I expected it to turn out. The first 4 rounds, you saw that Ryder was plodding. The agility and the movement of Danny Jacobs prevented him from being able to get inside and go to work. We're going to get a lot more technical as to why that was occurring. Eventually, you saw that Ryder was able to cut the ring off more effectively, up the tempo with his feet. And as Jacobs began to tie up, perhaps he's not as robust and durable as he used to be, it became more of an inside affair whereby even on the inside, where he was struggling early on, he started to find gaps, Ryder, and we'll talk about how he started to do that. And he began to really chop down at Jacobs and start to wear him down a little bit. But ultimately, I felt that, although it would be interesting that Jacobs would win the fight, and that's how I think it went. I think Jacobs won 7-5. Here's the thing, early on in the fight, what was happening is that John Ryder was coming in, trying to lead in with that lead hand wide. He was trying to step in with these wide hooks. And what he was doing was essentially falling into Danny Jacobs. Bear in mind, Ryder is a southpaw. So what happens is when he was trying to close the range and that range was being messed with a little bit, he would get a little bit desperate. He wasn't particularly active. He was very slow with his feet. And he'd be launching himself in. And when he would launch himself in, he wasn't changing the height dynamic. He should have come low a lot more. He was having success with the up jab when he was doing that. Because by coming in low and perhaps leaning your weight onto your back foot, you would have been forcing Jacobs to come in closer too. Instead, he was a little bit too upright, bit of a wide stance as well. He wasn't able to launch in that manner. But when he was then trying to get forward and close that gap quickly, launch himself in on occasion that he did, he would be leading with a right hook, a wide right hook. And what was happening is that Jacobs would read that, change the distance quickly, fall in. And as he's falling in, his arms would raise, the shot would come underneath or to the side, and it would be a cup-in shot that would land the inside of the glove, and then he'd get tied up. And he'd get tied up, he'd get clamped underneath the left hand of Danny Jacobs, and Jacobs would stay tight and force his right shoulder in towards the chest of John Ryder. Now, what this did is prevent John Ryder from being able to exit. He'd be left quite upright, trapped, and also it takes away both his right hand, his lead shot, the initial engaging shot, but then also because that shoulder's in, his own backhand, his left hand, was trapped. When they would then break off of that clinch, what would happen is Danny Jacobs would lean, throw himself almost like he's throwing an over-the-top left hand, lean towards his own right and bring that shot over the top of the shoulder, the lead shoulder of Ryder. And because his hand's been grabbed and Ryder's upright, he's a sitting duck. And that over-the-top shot was landing consistently on John Ryder. Not too dissimilar in terms of the dynamics from what I was saying in the preview that George Kambosos would be able to land on Teofimo Lopez because of the way that Teofimo Lopez hides behind the shoulder. If you're not going to change, if you're not going to dip your body to hide behind that shoulder, if you're going to use that shoulder as a shield, there's going to be part of your head that's exposed. And the angle of that meant that coming out of the clinch, Jacobs was able to have a lot of success. And this is a shot that he's made, very successful for himself throughout his career. What John Ryder then went on to do to change, to adjust, to start to bring him success, is first and foremost, rather than throw a wide right hook to close the range, the hook started to come inside the arc of Danny Jacobs' shoulder, inside the arc of his own hook. So rather than come wide, he would come through the middle almost with the hook. Now this does two things. First and foremost, it gets to the point faster, obviously, and you're avoiding that ability of him to just step in and close the range, because now you're cutting off that angle. But additionally, if I'm going to throw a wide right hook, I need to open up my torso. I'm going to open up my torso to throw that wide hook. Look where I end up being, on my center line. If I dip though, as I throw the right hand through this angle, look at where my head's come compared to before, right? So use the microphone as my center line. There's my center line. If I'm going to throw a big right hook, bang, potentially. Yeah, I might come off it to this angle. I might try and dip that way, but not really. I'm way too open if I do that. So I can either come off it in this manner, and that's more like a check hook, or if I'm going to throw it into a more central position, I sort of stay in the center line. Now, there's a time and a place for this, but Jacobs was reading it, so he shortened it up. The angle came across. Now it took me inside. As it takes me inside, he's starting to land inside the guard, so it's coming here instead of around here. He's landing inside the guard of Danny Jacobs. Apart from landing inside the guard of Danny Jacobs, what that also does, we were talking about when they fell into the clinch, he was upright. So when he'd be upright in that clinch and that shot would come over Ryder's right shoulder, his head's there on the center line, bang, he's getting caught. Whereas when he's throwing the shot here, when he ends up here at an angle, this is what Ryder's very good at. He likes to be here at an angle because that's what creates the space for the left uppercut to come through the middle. So he started to shorten his shots. And by shortening his shots, he was landing a lot more. He was opening up the space for those short little uppercuts that he's so good at, that we've seen him be destructive with against Cox, that we saw him have a lot of success against Callum Smith with. He turns into this little turtle underneath the shell, and he's finding little gaps in space. He even was throwing shoe shine stuff to the body at one point. And this is what Ryder's very good at, and that was the adjustment he made. The angle of his shots changed how he was in his center line, which created new openings on the inside. And that's when Danny Jacobs started to really struggle. And so that's what really changed the fight, the trajectory of the fight. Like I said, very close fight. I felt the wrong man got the decision, but I don't think it's the worst decision I've ever seen. I'm just being honest. It was a close competitive fight, and Ryder should have made that adjustment earlier. Had he made that adjustment earlier, it would have been a much more interesting fight, because he doesn't necessarily win the fight if he makes that adjustment earlier, because Danny Jacobs may have, while he was fresh, realized what was going on and said, you know what, I'm not going to stand and trade at all. I'm going to keep this guy at range. Then you start to ask the questions of, can he keep him at range like he did for the first 4 rounds? More extensive periods. Is he going to realize this guy's more of a danger, so I'm not going to sit on my shots and try and take him out. I really am going to box and try and make it boring and win a fight whereby a lot of people will say, well, Danny Jacobs looked dull, but he won the fight clearly. Let me know what you think. Yeah, of course, of the scorecards, but also about any adjustments you felt you saw in that fight. In terms of Danny Jacobs, because we've spoken about Ryder's adjustment, what Jacobs should have done, in my humble opinion, was get behind the jab and just move and consistently change direction and rotate circle around the ring. I know it's not easy to do when you're tired, and he was having a lot of success of his own when they were exchanging power punches on the inside. And Rosier was telling him, be mean, make this guy back up and things like that. I'm not sure I agree with Rosier in that example, though. I do think that, what did Ryder want? Ryder wanted the pocket. And as Andre Ward says, you always make a guy do what he doesn't want to do. And I thought that JACOBS played into his hands a little bit. Just like I said pre-fight, if he does that, it gives Ryder a real chance. And it was a great fight. I wouldn't mind seeing it again, to be honest with you. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.